And a very happy day, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Burgess back with Think and Grow Rich. And we're still in the chapter on faith. And part one of faith, we talked about how the only way to develop faith within is through the repetition of affirmation of orders to the subconscious mind. Kind of like math class. You know, 1 plus 1, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 3, over and over and over again. And if I were to ask you what is 5 times 5, you would be able to answer that question with full faith. And then we talked about in part two how self-suggestion, repetitive, the principle of auto-suggestion is what Napoleon calls it. We'll get into that chapter next. But self-suggestion is how we develop faith. We suggest to ourselves repetitively over and over again every day anyway. Now, the only question is, are we in control of what we're repeating to ourselves? Are we even consciously aware of it? I mean, are we aware of what the heck we're saying to ourselves every day, day in and day out? Because that is what we are developing faith in. And then in part three, we talked about the self-confidence formula. And I have a copy of the self-confidence formula right here. I keep it right here. It's laminated. It's a beautiful gift that I got from the Proctor Gallagher Institute. Bob Proctor gave it to me at one of the seminars. It's absolutely fantastic. We actually signed it, turned it back in, and then he had it laminated up for us. So it was fantastic. But read this self-confidence formula day in and day out. It doesn't mean read it all day, but certainly have it close by so you can refer to it and you can see it. That'll remind you of the formula and it'll remind you to stay engaged. We also ended part three with how we talked about how all impulses of thought have a tendency to clothe themselves in their physical equivalent. Well, that only happens if we repetitively impress that thought upon ourselves. And the issue we have in today's world is most people are repetitively impressing upon themselves all the negative shit that they don't really want. But they do it over and over and over again. And over and over again. And then they'll do it some more. And then they get really emotionally involved in it. What they don't want and all the negative stuff that they don't want. And it doesn't work out real well. As we'll learn through the principle of autosuggestion, whatever we get emotionally involved in gets to the subconscious even faster. But we want to continue with where we talk about the subconscious mind and how it's the chemical laboratory in which all thought impulses are combined and then made ready for transition into physical reality. And he says that this part of us, the subconscious part of it, makes no distinction between constructive and destructive thought impulses. It simply works with the material that we feed it. What are we feeding it? Are we feeding it the news networks and all the doom and gloom that's going on in the world? I'm not saying one shouldn't be aware of that. It should be aware of it. But if that's all you're putting in your mind day in and day out, over and over and over again, think about it, right? Because the subconscious makes no distinction between constructive and destructive thought impulses. It works with the material we feed it. The subconscious mind will translate into reality a thought driven by fear just as readily as it will translate into reality a thought driven by courage or faith. So it's up to you. What frequency are we vibrating on? What frequency are we vibrating on? Yeah, I know that was a lot for me to talk about. Remember, I quit school in the 8th grade, so let's put it this way, real simple. How are you vibing today? How are you vibing? Is it a positive vibe? Is it a negative vibe? Is it a positive vibe with definiteness of purpose because you've read the 6 steps over and over and over again? And if you haven't done that, go back to Desire, part 1 and 2 for sure, and get into the 6 steps. Because now we're developing faith. So how are you vibing today? Because what we're talking about here is you controlling that. That's what we're really talking about. Napoleon continues, he says, the pages of medical history are rich with illustrations of cases of suggestive suicide. He says a person may commit suicide through negative suggestion just as effectively as by any other means. In a Midwestern city, he tells the story about a man named Joseph. He was a bank official. He borrowed a large sum of money. He lost the money through gambling. One afternoon, the bank examiner came and began to check the accounts. They do their audits. That's what they do. And this guy leaves the bank. He gets in a hotel room in a local hotel. And when they found him 3 days later, he's lying in bed, wailing and crying and moaning and repeating over and over and over again, "My God, this will kill me. I cannot stand this disgrace. Oh my gosh." Well, in a short time, the story says he was dead. And the doctors pronounced the case as mental suicide. Now, Napoleon says, just as electricity will turn the wheels of industry and render useful service if used constructively, or sniff out life if used wrongly, so will the law of auto-suggestion lead you to peace and prosperity, or down into the valley of misery, failure, and death, according to your degree of understanding and application of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's how we use self-suggestion each and every day that will determine the life we live. More than any other thing, that one thing right there will determine how we live our lives. He says, if you fill your mind with fear, doubt, and unbelief in your ability to connect with and use the forces of infinite intelligence, the law of auto-suggestion will take this spirit of unbelief and use it as a pattern by which the subconscious will translate it into its physical equivalent. He says, this statement is as true as the statement that 2 and 2 are 4. So how are we thinking today? Are we got the positive mojo going? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying to be Pollyanna. I know there's issues in the world. I know there's wackos out there. I get it. But I also know that I am in control of how I feel today. I am in control of this based on the dominating thoughts that I allow to be in the conscious part of the mind. It's not, once again, it's not hard to understand. He says, like the wind which carries one ship east and another west, the law of self-suggestion will lift you up or pull you down according to the way you set your sails of thought. Think and grow rich. The law of self-suggestion, through which any person may rise to altitudes of achievement which stagger the imagination, is well described in the following verse. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win but think you can't, it's almost certain that you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out in the world we find, success begins with the fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the smarter or faster man. But soon or late, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. Napoleon says, observe the words which have been emphasized and you will catch the deep meaning which the poet had in mind. It's pretty simple, the meaning he had in mind. And I apologize I couldn't show you the emphasized words, but go read get a copy of it, go read it. Somewhere in your makeup, you and I, somewhere in our makeup, perhaps in the cells of the brain, there lies sleeping the seed of achievement which, if aroused and put into action, would carry you to heights such as you may never have hoped to attain. He says, just as a master musician may cause the most beautiful strains of music to pour forth from the strings of a violin, so may you arouse the genius which lies asleep in your brain and cause it to drive you upward to whatever goal you may wish to achieve. What is that goal you wish to achieve? What did you write down? Remember step 1? What is step 1 in the 6 steps? Step 1, what do you really want? Yes, Napoleon says, how much money do you want? You can use step 1 for anything. It doesn't matter. What do you really want? What do you really, really want? Talks about a guy named Abraham Lincoln. Some may know the name, some may not. But this guy was an absolute nobody from nowhere until a great experience came into his life, aroused that sleeping genius within his heart and brain, and then gave us a really great president going way, 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 way back in history. It says that experience was mixed with the emotions of sorrow and love. It came to him through Anne Rutledge, the only woman whom he ever truly loved. So once again, he talked about when you mix the emotion of love and faith together, the emotion of love, faith, and sex is what he said in the chapter. And you mix those emotions together, you bring an energy that is uncompromised by anything. By anything. He says it's a known fact that the emotion of love is closely akin to the state of mind known as faith. The emotion of love. The emotion of love is closely akin to that state of mind known as faith. He says, and for this reason, that love comes very near to translating one's thought impulses into their spiritual equivalent. During his work of research, the author discovered from the analysis of the life, work, and achievements of hundreds of men of outstanding accomplishment that there was the influence of a woman's love back of nearly every one of them. The emotion of love in the human heart and brain creates a favorable field of magnetic attraction, which causes an influx of the higher and finer vibrations which are afloat in the ether. Remember, the ether is microwaves. The ether right now is being utilized probably by you to watch this video. You don't have any cords hooking you up anywhere, but you're still watching on the internet. How does that happen? They're microwaves. That's all. It's not that hard to understand. Remember, I quit school in the 8th grade, man. We got to keep things really, really simple, or I'm not going to comprehend it at all. And think about it. We have to send a communication out, and then you have some sort of transmitter that receives it in. Well, it's carried through the ether, is what Napoleon's talking about. He talks about if we wish evidence of the power of faith, he says, study the achievements of men and women who have employed it. And then he gives the example of what he says at the head of the list comes the Nazarene. Christianity is the greatest single force which influences the minds of men. And the basis of Christianity is faith. Now, I'm not here preaching religion in any way, shape, or form, so please don't take it that way. This is simply an example. That's all it is. He says, no matter how many people may have perverted or misinterpreted the meaning of this great force, and no matter how many dogmas and creeds have been created in its name, which really do not reflect its tenets, the basis of Christianity is faith. And I'm not sure how we could argue that, but once again, I'm not here to preach religion in any way, shape, or form. He says this, though, the sum and substance of the teachings and the achievements of Christ, which may have been interpreted as miracles, he says, were nothing more nor less than faith. If there are any such phenomena as miracles, they are produced only through the state of mind known as faith. Some teachers of religion and many who call themselves Christians neither understand nor practice true faith. Now, I know that may ruffle a few feathers, but I think if we stop and pay attention and really pay attention, there's a lot of truth in what Napoleon's saying here. And once again, he wrote that in 1937. He says, let us consider the power of faith as it is now being demonstrated by a man who is well known to all civilization. The guy's name was Mahatma Gandhi. You may have heard of Gandhi. What this guy pulled off without any suit of armor, guns, or anything like that, no big military arsenal, none of that stuff. But he wanted freedom. He had none of the orthodox tools, no money, no battleships, no soldiers, no materials of warfare, no money himself, no home, didn't have any suit, no nice suit of clothing. But he did have power. How did he come across that power? He created it out of his understanding of the principle of faith, and through his ability to transplant that faith into the minds of 200 million people. If you're not sure who Gandhi is, research it. He has accomplished through the influence of faith that which the strongest military power on earth could not and never will accomplish through soldiers and military equipment. He has accomplished the astounding feat of influencing 200 million minds to coalesce and move in unison as a single mind. What other force on earth except faith could do as much? He says there will come a day when employees as well as employers will discover the possibilities of faith. That would be a welcome achievement, wouldn't it? That day is dawning. The whole world has had ample opportunity during the recent business depression to witness what the lack of faith will do to business. Are we not witnessing some of that same thing right now? I mean, just take a look at our world. Are we or are we not witnessing some of that same thing right now? Napoleon continues. Now remember, he wrote this in 37 coming out of the Great Depression. He says, surely civilization has produced a sufficient number of intelligent human beings to bring use of this great lesson which the Depression has taught the world. Didn't we recently just go through something pretty nasty? And well, by the way, what happened to all of that? During the Depression, during what we just experienced, the world had evidence in abundance that widespread fear will paralyze the wheels of industry and business. Isn't that what just took place? Widespread fear paralyzed the industry and business. He says out of this experience will arise leaders in business and industry who will grow from this experience. Ladies and gentlemen, every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent benefit. It's up to you and I to find the benefit. It's up to you and I to find the advantage. It's up to you and I to find the good and the bad. That's up to you and I. It's up to you and I to control the dominating thoughts of our mind. It's up to you and I to take control of our mind, repetitively impress upon our mind that which we desire. What do we really want? That which we desire. I sound like Napoleon now. Well, I have been studying it every day for over 26 years, so if I sound like him, it's almost like I swallowed this book, I think. But it's up to you and I to develop faith in our own ability. It's up to you and I to change the image we hold of ourselves, and we do that through the repetition of affirmation of orders. See, it's real simple. Ladies and gentlemen, the image you hold of yourself right now is the lid that may be holding you back. If you want more out of life, in any area of life, spiritual, social, mental, physical, family, or financial, we have to increase the image of ourselves in that area. For example, if all we do is see ourselves as a person who's unfit, unattractive, maybe overweight, whatever it may be, that's what we get. We have to change the image of ourselves here first, and repetitively impress it upon the mind over and over again first. And then we develop faith in our own ability to get the physical appearance we desire. It's not hard. It's not hard to understand. Thoughts, feelings, actions, results. The feeling part is where the repetition comes into play if we wish to change it or control it. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you hit the subscribe button, push the notification button. The next part of this chapter will wrap it up, and it's a phenomenal story of how one guy had one idea, and that one idea in the early 1900s, this one idea became a $600 million profit. One idea. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, do me a favor, share us out on Facebook when you see us, leave us some comments, let us know what you think of what we're doing. We greatly appreciate your time. And as always, Joe, thank you. Without you, Joe, we wouldn't be here today. So everybody say thanks to Joe. Yeah, I can hear them all. Joe, thank you. There you go, buddy. I do greatly appreciate all of what Joe has done to help me be here and get here. As always, ladies and gentlemen, we want to wish for this day to be the very best day you've ever experienced in this game we call life. Yesterday doesn't matter. It's already gone. It's history. Tomorrow isn't here. You can't do anything about it but plan. But this day right now, this moment in time, you can decide to allow it to be the best you've ever experienced. So please do so. Tonight, when you put your head on the pillow, please do so with a mind full of peace. Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. And may God bless each and every one of you. Have a fabulous day today.